The tour bus materializes at the toll gate like a ghost from the past, its headlights cutting through morning mist. The electronic scanner beeps green as it reads tickets that were issued 22 years ago, tickets belonging to passengers who vanished without a trace into the Carpathian fog. But let's rewind to where this impossible story begins. Sarah Chun's coffee grows cold as she stares at the security monitor, her hand frozen halfway to her mouth. The timestamp reads 6:47 a.m., October 15th, 2024, and what she's seeing defies every rational explanation her analytical mind can construct. "Marcus, you need to see this," she calls to her supervisor, her voice barely above a whisper. The Brasov Mountain Pass toll station operates 24 hours a day, processing thousands of vehicles traveling between Romania and Hungary. Sarah has worked the overnight shift for 3 years, and she's seen her share of unusual incidents: drunk drivers, smuggling attempts, the occasional celebrity trying to avoid paparazzi. But nothing has prepared her for this. Marcus Torres shuffles over, still nursing his morning energy drink. At 52, he's seen enough anomalies to approach most situations with weary skepticism. "What's got you spooked, Chun?" Sarah rewinds the security footage by 30 seconds. "Watch the northbound lane, camera 3. They observe together as a vintage charter bus emerges from the dense fog that perpetually shrouds this section of the Carpathians. The vehicle appears suddenly, as if materializing from another dimension. Its blue and white paint scheme looks immaculate despite the age suggested by its boxy design, a style popular in the early 2000s. Probably some tourist group with a restored bus, Marcus suggests, but his tone lacks conviction. "Look at the license plate." Marcus squints at the monitor. The Romanian registration reads clearly, B472TRC. Sarah's fingers dance across her keyboard, pulling up the transportation database. "That plate was retired in 2018, she says, her voice tight with confusion. "The bus it belonged to was ... She pauses, her face draining of color. "Marcus, this vehicle was officially declared lost in 2002. The database entry fills her screen. Charter bus B472TRC. Operated by Mountain Vista Tours, reported missing October 15th, 2002. Vehicle N23. Passengers presumed lost in avalanche. Case closed due to insufficient evidence." Marcus's energy drink slips from his nerveless fingers, clattering to the floor. "That's impossible." Sarah's hands tremble as she switches to the live feed. The bus sits motionless at the toll booth, its engine idling with a low, steady rumble. Through the windshield, she can make out a figure in the driver's seat, but the morning mist and tinted glass obscure any details. "Should I go out there?" she asks. "No." Marcus's response is immediate and firm. "We call this in, now." But before he can reach for the phone, the automated toll system activates. The mechanical arm lifts with its characteristic metallic groan, and the bus rolls forward into Hungarian territory. Sarah watches helplessly as it disappears into the fog on the other side of the border. "The system logged it," she breathes, staring at her screen. 23 passenger tickets, purchased October 13th, 2002, paid in full. She looks up at Marcus, her eyes wide with disbelief. The scanner read them as valid. Marcus grabs the emergency phone, his usual calm demeanor cracking. "This is Brasov Pass Station. We need immediate contact with Hungarian border control and whoever handles unexplained incidents." While Marcus explains their impossible situation to increasingly skeptical officials, Sarah cannot tear her eyes from the screen. She rewinds the footage again, frame by frame, searching for some rational explanation. But the more she studies the image, the more questions multiply in her mind. The bus appears solid, real, casting appropriate shadows and reflecting light. Normally. Yet something about it feels wrong, not supernatural. Exactly, but displaced, as if it belongs to a different time entirely. Her phone buzzes with a text from her sister in Bucharest. Saw the news about that old missing bus case. Wasn't that your route? Creepy timing with the anniversary. Sarah's blood runs cold. She hadn't made the connection. Today is October 5th, exactly 22 years since the Mountain Vista tour group vanished. The bus that just passed through her toll station disappeared on this very date in 2002, carrying 23 passengers on what should have been a simple 3-day tour of the Carpathian Mountains. She remembers the story from her childhood. A routine tourist excursion that became Romania's most enduring mystery. The group had included families from across Europe, Germans seeking autumn landscapes, Italian couples celebrating anniversaries, British hikers drawn by the region's folklore. They'd checked into their hotel in Brasov on October 13th, boarded their bus the following morning, and simply vanished. Search teams had combed the mountains for weeks. Helicopters swept the valleys, mountain rescue units explored every cave and crevice, but no trace of the bus or its passengers was ever found. The official conclusion blamed an avalanche that had supposedly buried the vehicle so completely that even modern ground-penetrating radar couldn't locate it. But Sarah has just watched that same bus pass through her toll station, its tickets scanning green as if no time had passed at all. Marcus hangs up the phone, his face grim. Hungarian border control has no record of the bus entering their territory. Their cameras show nothing but fog. Detective Elena Popescu receives the call while standing in her mother's hospital room, watching machines monitor the woman who raised her single-handedly after her father's death. The irony isn't lost on her just as she's confronting the possibility of losing the only family she has left. She's being asked to investigate people who vanished and impossibly returned. "I need you on this, Elena," says Chief Inspector Radu. Moldovan, his voice crackling through her phone. "Whatever happened at Brasov Pass this morning, it's already drawing attention from Bucharest. Ministry of Interior is asking questions." Elena glances at her mother's peaceful face, the oxygen mask rising and falling with each labored breath. "The doctors say she has days, maybe weeks." "Sir, I'm on family leave. This can't wait. We have security footage of a bus that's been missing for 22 years. Either we're dealing with an elaborate hoax, or..." He trails off, unable to voice the alternative. "Or what, sir?" "Or we're dealing with something that requires your particular expertise." Elena knows what he means. 3 years ago, she solved the Sinaya child disappearances, a case that baffled investigators for months, until Elena noticed patterns others missed, connections that seemed impossible until proven true. Her reputation for handling unusual cases has made her both valuable and isolated within the department. "I'll be there in 2 hours, she says, squeezing her mother's hand before leaving the sterile white room. The drive from Bucharest to Brasov gives Elena time to review the preliminary file Moldovan texted her. The details are sparse but disturbing. A bus matching the exact description of the missing Mountain Vista charter, complete with the correct license plate and passenger manifest, passed through the toll station at 6:47 a.m. The vehicle's tickets, scanned as valid despite being issued over 2 decades ago. Elena has seen the original case file before. It's required reading for anyone in missing persons. 23 passengers, ranging in age from 8 to 74, vanished without explanation. The tour group had been diverse, the Weber family from Munich celebrating their daughter's graduation, elderly couple Antonio and Lucia Rossi on their 40th wedding anniversary, adventure photographer James Crawford documenting Carpathian folklore, and others seeking everything from hiking trails to family heritage. What haunts investigators isn't just the disappearance itself, but the complete absence of evidence. No skid marks, no wreckage, no personal belongings, nothing to suggest where or how the bus left the mountain road. It simply ceased to exist, taking 23 lives with it. Elena arrives at Bresov Pass as afternoon shadows begin stretching across the mountains. The toll station sits like a lonely sentinel between two worlds, its modern electronic systems a stark contrast to the ancient peaks surrounding it. Sarah Chun and Marcus Torres wait for her in the station's cramped office, their faces bearing the shell-shocked expression of people whose reality has been fundamentally shaken. "Show me everything," Elena says without preamble. Sarah cues. Up the security footage, her hand still trembling slightly. It appears at 6 hours 46 minutes and 52 seconds right here. She points to the edge of the frame where fog swirls thickest. 1 second there's nothing. The next ... double quotes. Elena watches the bus materialize from the mist. Her detective's eye immediately catalogs details. The vehicle's pristine condition despite its age. The way morning light reflects naturally off its windows. The steady rhythm of its engine. Whatever this is, it's not a projection or digital manipulation. "The toll system responded normally?" she asks. Marcus nods. "Scanned 23 tickets. Charged the appropriate fees to a credit card that was canceled in 2003. The system shows the transaction as successful." Elena studies the timestamp. 6:47 a.m. Exactly 22 years to the day they disappeared. "You think that's significant?" Sarah asks. "In my experience, detective, timing is always significant." Elena screenshots the clearest frame showing the bus's license plate. "I need to speak with the original investigating team." The drive to Brasov Police Headquarters takes Elena through the old city center, where medieval buildings huddle beneath the watchful shadow of Tampa Mountain. Halloween decorations hang from shop windows, plastic bats and artificial spider webs that seem almost quaint compared to the real mystery she's investigating. Inspector Georgi Stanescu retired 5 years ago, but the Mountain Vista case never left him. Elena finds him in his small apartment above a bakery, surrounded by boxes of files he was never officially allowed to take home. "I knew this day would come," he says before she can introduce herself, his weathered face creased with resignation. 22 years, and I never stopped feeling like we missed something crucial." Stanescu's living room has been converted into an informal command center. Maps of the Carpathian Mountains cover every wall, marked with colored pins indicating search zones, witness reports, and dead ends. A timeline stretches across one entire wall, documenting every known movement of the tour group from their arrival in Romania until their disappearance. "The official investigation lasted 6 months, Stanescu explains, gesturing to a thick stack of files. "But I kept working the case on my own time. My wife thought I was obsessed, and maybe I was, but those 23 people deserved better than being filed away as an unsolved mystery." Elena examines the timeline. "What convinced you they hadn't simply had an accident?" "Everything," Stanescu says emphatically. The weather was clear that morning, no avalanche conditions. The driver, Mihai Antonescu, knew these roads like his own heartbeat. 30 years of mountain driving without a single incident. And then there were the inconsistencies in witness statements. He pulls out a map marked with red X's. 3 different people reported seeing the bus on 3 different roads at roughly the same time. Either multiple witnesses were lying, or the bus was somehow in multiple places simultaneously. Elena feels the familiar tingle that signals a case with hidden depths. "What's your theory?" Stanescu meets her eyes, and she sees the haunted look of a man who's glimpsed something beyond normal understanding. "I think they were taken, Detective Popescu. Not by criminals or kidnappers, but by something else entirely. Something that's finally brought them back." Elena spreads Stanescu's files across her hotel room bed like tarot cards revealing an impossible future. The retired inspector has given her copies of everything: official reports, witness statements, his own handwritten theories scrawled in margins thick with desperation. But it's the photographs that capture her attention. 23 faces frozen in passport shots and family snapshots, their eyes holding no hint of the fate awaiting them. Her phone rings at 11:47 p.m. The number is unknown, but something compels her to answer. "Detective Popescu?" The voice is elderly, female, speaking accented English. "My name is Margot Weber. I believe you're investigating my family's disappearance." Elena sits up straighter. Weber, she recognizes the name from the passenger manifest. "Mrs. Weber, how did you get this number?" "I've been following the case for 22 years, detective. I have contacts." The woman's voice carries the weight of decades spent in desperate hope. "My daughter Klaus, my granddaughter Emma, my son-in-law Hans, they were on that bus. When I heard about this morning's sighting, I took the first flight from Munich." "You're in Romania?" "I'm in the lobby of your hotel." Elena finds Margot Weber sitting in the dimly lit lobby, a woman in her 70s with silver hair and eyes that have seen too much sorrow. She clutches a worn leather portfolio against her chest like armor. "I know you think I'm a crazy old woman," Margot begins, as Elena sits across from her. "But I've never stopped believing they would come back. A mother knows when her child is truly gone, and I've never felt that finality." Elena studies the woman's face, searching for signs of delusion but finding only fierce determination. "What? Can you tell me about the day they left?" Margot opens her portfolio, revealing newspaper clippings, emails, and handwritten letters. "Klaus called me the night before from their hotel. She was excited. Emma had just turned 16, and this was her first adult trip. They were planning to visit Peel's castle, then take the scenic route through the mountains." She produces a photograph, a happy family of 3 standing before the Brasov city sign. Klaus Weber appears to be in her early 40s, her husband. Hans slightly older, their daughter Emma, a typical teenager with bright eyes and an impatient smile. "This was taken the morning they left," Margot continues. "Klaus sent it to me via email at 7:15 a.m. 20 minutes later, their bus departed the hotel." Elena examines the photo's metadata on her phone. The timestamp confirms Margot's story, but something else catches her attention: the background. Behind the Weber family, other tourists mill about, and Elena recognizes faces from the passenger manifest. The elderly Italian couple, Antonio and Lucia Rossi, smile at each other with the contentment of long marriage. James Crawford, the British photographer, adjusts his camera equipment with professional precision. "I've studied every frame of hotel security footage from that morning," Margot says. Everyone seemed normal, happy, excited for their adventure. There was nothing to suggest they were walking toward their doom. The official investigation concluded. The official investigation concluded nothing. Margot interrupts with sudden fire. "They gave up because they couldn't explain what happened, so they blamed an avalanche that never occurred. But I never stopped searching." She pulls out a map of Romania, its surface covered with red marks and handwritten notes. "For 22 years, I've hired private investigators, consulted psychics, followed every lead no matter how absurd. I've walked every trail in these mountains, interviewed every witness, bribed officials for access to classified files." Elena traces the red marks with her finger. They form a rough circle around the Carpathian region, with several concentrated areas. "What are these locations?" "Sightings," Margot says simply. "Over the years, people have reported seeing the bus, or passengers, or both. Most were false alarms or mistaken identity, but some—" She taps a cluster of marks near Rasnov. "Some were different." "Different how?" "In 2008, a shepherd reported seeing the Mountain Vista bus parked beside Lake Omu. When police investigated, they found tire tracks in mud that matched the bus's specifications, but the tracks led directly into the lake and disappeared. No vehicle was ever recovered from the water." Elena makes notes, her detective skepticism warring with growing intrigue. And you believe these sightings are connected to this morning's toll booth incident? Margot nods firmly. I think they've been trying to come home for 22 years. But something has been preventing them. Something that finally weakened enough to let them through. Mrs. Weber, I have to ask, have you considered the possibility that your family is no longer alive? The question hangs between them like a blade. Margot's composure finally cracks, tears flowing freely down her weathered cheeks. Every day, detective. Every single day for 22 years, I've considered that possibility. But a mother's heart knows things that minds cannot understand. They're alive and they need our help. Elena's phone buzzes with a text from Chief Inspector Moldovan. Hungarian authorities report bus spotted on A3 highway near Debrecen. Vehicle appears to be heading southwest back toward Romanian border. She shows the message to Margot, whose face transforms with desperate hope. They're coming home, she whispers. After all these years, they're finally coming home. But Elena feels a chill that has nothing to do with the October night. If the bus is returning to Romania, it's heading directly toward the region where it originally vanished. The same mountain roads, the same mysterious circumstances that claimed 23 lives 22 years ago. Mrs. Weber, she says carefully, what if they're not coming home by choice? What if something is calling them back? The elderly woman's eyes widen with sudden fear. You think they're in danger? Elena stares at Stanescu's map, spread across the lobby table, its network of red X's resembling a spider's web, with Bresov at its center. Every instinct she's developed during her career screams that the Weber family and their fellow passengers aren't returning as willing travelers. They're being drawn back to the place where their nightmare began. And Elena has no idea how to stop a force that can make buses vanish for 22 years before returning them like pieces in some cosmic game. I think, Elena says slowly, we need to be at those mountain roads when they arrive. Elena stands at the edge of the Omu Valley as dawn breaks over the Carpathian peaks, her breath forming small clouds in the thin mountain air. Beside her, Margot Weber clutches a thermos of coffee with hands that haven't stopped shaking since they received the latest update. The Mountain Vista bus passed through 3 more toll stations during the night, each sighting confirmed by security. Cameras and electronic records that shouldn't exist. It's following the original route, Inspector Stanescu observes, studying his GPS against the faded map spread across the hood of Elena's police vehicle. Turn by turn, exactly as planned 22 years ago. The assembled search team represents an unusual coalition. Elena's official investigation unit, Stanescu's unofficial expertise, Margot's desperate hope, and a handful of local mountain rescue volunteers who remember the original search. They've positioned themselves at the 3 most likely locations where the bus might reappear based on the route Mountain Vista. Tours had filed with authorities in 2002. Elena's radio crackles with updates from her colleagues stationed at other vantage points. Team 2 reporting from Pradiel Pass, no visual contact. Weather conditions clear, visibility excellent. Team 3 at Sinai, a checkpoint negative sighting, all quiet here. Elena adjusts her binoculars, scanning the winding mountain road that cuts through the valley below. The asphalt ribbon disappears around rocky outcroppings and emerges again higher up the mountainside, creating multiple blind spots where a bus could appear without warning. Detective, Margot says softly, what happens when we find them? The question Elena has been avoiding confronts her directly. What protocol exists for encountering people who vanished 22 years ago and presumably haven't aged a day? How does one process passengers who might not even realize they've been missing? We approach carefully, Elena replies, knowing how inadequate her answer sounds. We establish communication, ensure everyone's safety, and try to understand what happened. And if they don't remember where they've been? Elena doesn't answer because she has no answer. Her experience with missing persons cases provides no framework for this situation. People don't simply reappear after decades unchanged. carrying valid tickets from the distant past. At 7:23 a.m., exactly 22 years and 8 hours after the original disappearance, Elena's radio explodes with static-filled voices. "This is Team 2, we have visual contact." "Repeat, visual contact on the bus." Elena's binoculars sweep the horizon until she spots it. A blue and white speck moving steadily along the mountain road. Still kilometers away, but undeniably real. The vehicle appears to be traveling at normal speed, showing no signs of distress or mechanical problems. "All teams converge on checkpoint Alpha," Elena commands, her pulse quickening. "Maintain safe distance and observe. Do not attempt to stop the vehicle until we understand the situation." As they drive toward the intercept point, Margot stares through the windshield with an expression caught between joy and terror. What if they don't recognize me? What if 22 years have passed for them too, and Klaus thinks I abandoned her? "We'll figure it out," Elena promises, though uncertainty gnaws at her. Every assumption about this case has proven wrong, and she suspects the reality will be stranger than any theory they've constructed. The bus reaches the valley floor and begins climbing the access road toward their position. Through her binoculars, Elena can see the vehicle clearly now. It looks exactly as it did in the 2002 promotional photographs, its paint fresh and unmarked by decades of weather. The windshield reflects morning sunlight, obscuring the driver's seat, but she can make out shadowy figures moving within the passenger compartment. "They look normal," Stanescu mutters, his own binoculars trained on the approaching bus. Whatever happened to them, they appear to be unharmed. Elena's radio crackles again. "Detective Popescu, this is Border Control Command. We're receiving reports that the bus has been spotted simultaneously at 3 different locations across Romania. Brasov, Cluj, and Timisoara stations all report the same vehicle passing through toll points at the exact same time." Elena's blood runs cold. "Say again, Command. Did you say simultaneously?" "Confirmed. 3 separate security systems logged identical vehicles with identical passenger. Manifests at 7:23 a.m. this morning. We're dealing with either a massive coordination effort or..." The transmission cuts to static as the bus rounds the final curve and comes into full view. Elena lowers her binoculars, her mind struggling to process what she's seeing. The vehicle appears perfectly normal until she notices its reflection. Or rather, the absence of reflection in the roadside guardrails and puddles left by morning dew. The bus casts no shadow despite the bright sunlight, and the sound of its engine seems muffled, as if traveling through water rather than air. "Dear God," Margot whispers, her face drained of color. "What have they become?" The bus slows as it approaches their position, and Elena can finally see through the windshield. The driver sits motionless behind the wheel, his hands positioned correctly, but his head tilted at an unnatural angle. Behind him, passengers fill every seat, families, couples, individuals, all facing forward with identical expressions of peaceful concentration. None of them are moving. None of them appear to be breathing. Yet as the bus draws closer, Elena sees Klaus Weber's face in the 3rd-row window. The woman looks exactly as she did in the 2002 photographs, no older, no different, as if she stepped out of time itself. Her eyes are open and aware, tracking Elena's position with unsettling precision. Klaus Weber raises her hand and presses it against the window glass. Her mouth moves, forming words Elena cannot hear but can clearly read. "Help us." The bus continues past their position without stopping, climbing higher into the mountains along the same route that led to its disappearance 22 years ago. Elena realizes with growing horror that the passengers aren't returning home. They're being compelled to repeat their final journey, trapped in an endless loop of their last moments. "We have to follow them," Margot says, her voice breaking. With desperation, we have to help them break free. Elena starts her engine, knowing they're driving towards something beyond normal understanding. something that has held 23 souls prisoner for over 2 decades and shows no intention of releasing them. Elena's police cruiser struggles to keep pace with the bus as it climbs the increasingly treacherous mountain road. The vehicle ahead moves with unnatural steadiness, taking curves at speeds that should send it careening off the narrow asphalt. Yet it maintains perfect control, as if guided by an intelligence beyond its driver. "They're heading for Devil's Canyon," Stanescu observes grimly, studying his map against the dashboard. That's where the original search focused, the most dangerous section of the entire route. Elena's radio fills with concerned voices from the other search teams. "Detective, we're losing visual as they climb higher. Weather conditions are deteriorating rapidly." Through her windshield, Elena watches thick fog rolling down from the peaks, swallowing the mountain road in segments. The mist moves against the wind, defying natural patterns, flowing like a living thing toward the bus and its ghostly passengers. "The fog," Margot breathes from the passenger seat, her knuckles white as she grips the door handle. "It's the same fog that was reported 22 years ago. Witnesses said it came from nowhere, thick as wool, and then vanished when the search teams arrived." Elena accelerates, pushing her vehicle's limits as the distance between them and the bus increases. The fog reaches the police car first, and suddenly they're driving blind through a gray void so dense that even their headlights barely penetrate 3 meters ahead. "I can't see anything," Elena mutters, forced to slow to a crawl. "How is that bus maintaining speed in this visibility?" Her answer comes from Stanescu's sharp intake of breath. "Because it doesn't need to see where it's going. It's following a path burned into memory or something beyond memory." The radio crackles with increasingly urgent reports. "All teams, we've lost contact with the primary vehicle. Repeat, Detective Popescu's unit is not responding to radio calls." Elena grabs her radio, but static fills the airwaves. The fog seems to be interfering with all electronic equipment. Her GPS screen flickers between normal display and incomprehensible symbols, while her phone shows no signal despite being in an area with excellent coverage. "We're being cut off from the outside world," she realizes. "Whatever force took them 22 years ago is ensuring we experience this alone." Through the gray void, Elena catches glimpses of red taillights ahead the bus, still climbing steadily higher. She follows the faint glow like a lifeline, knowing that losing visual contact might mean losing the passengers forever. "There," Margot points through the swirling mist, "a clearing ahead." The fog thins suddenly, revealing a small plateau where the mountain road widens into a scenic overlook. Elena recognizes the location from crime scene photographs. This is where the tour group was scheduled to stop for photographs of the valley below. The bus sits motionless in the exact position described in the original itinerary, its engine idling peacefully. Elena parks 50 meters away, her instincts screaming caution despite Margot's obvious desire to rush toward her family. "We approach slowly," she instructs. "Something brought them here for a reason." As they walk toward the bus, Elena notices details that make her skin crawl. The vehicle's tires don't quite touch the ground. It hovers perhaps 2 centimeters above the asphalt, supported by nothing visible. The windows show condensation from breath and body heat, but the patterns are too perfect, too symmetrical, like frost forming in mathematical precision. "Klaus," Margot calls softly, approaching the 3rd-row window where her daughter sits. "Klaus, it's Mama. I'm here." Klaus Weber turns her head with mechanical precision, her eyes focusing on her mother's face. For a moment, recognition flickers across her features, joy, relief, love, but then her expression freezes again in that same peaceful concentration. Elena peers through the front windshield at the driver, Mihai Antonescu. His eyes are open and aware, but his hands grip the steering wheel with such force that his knuckles show white beneath skin that appears translucent. His mouth moves in a continuous whisper, repeating words Elena cannot hear. He's saying coordinates, Stanescu observes, reading the driver's lips. Geographic coordinates, the same ones over and over. Elena circles the bus, documenting everything with her phone's camera, despite the electronic interference. Each passenger sits in perfect stillness, their eyes tracking movement outside, but their bodies locked in position, as if waiting for some predetermined signal. Young Emma Weber, now forever 16, stares through her window with an expression of desperate awareness. When Elena approaches, the girl's mouth forms silent words. "We can't stop. It won't let us stop." "What won't let you stop?" Elena asks, knowing the girl cannot hear her but hoping for some form of communication. Emma's hand moves to the window, her fingers tracing letters in the condensation. Re. The simple word sends ice through Elena's veins. Not there, or it, but here, something present, something watching, something that has maintained control over these 23 souls for over 2 decades. Elena's phone buzzes despite the signal interference. A text message appears from an unknown number. You have 47 minutes before the cycle completes. They return to the void at sunset. Save them or lose them forever. Who sent this? Elena shows the message to Stanescu and Margot. "I don't know," Stanescu admits, "but I believe it." The original disappearance occurred at 6:15 p.m., exactly 47 minutes from now. If the pattern holds, we have less than an hour to break whatever force is holding them. Margot presses both hands against the bus window, tears streaming down her face. "Klaus, can you hear me? Fight whatever is controlling you. Remember who you are. Remember your family." For a moment, Klaus Weber's expression shifts. Her hand moves toward the window, reaching for her mother's touch. But then her face contorts with pain, as if the simple act of independent movement causes her agony. The bus's engine note changes, rising from idle to active driving speed. Through the windshield, Elena sees Mihai Antonescu's hands begin turning. The steering wheel, despite his obvious struggle against the motion. It's starting again, Elena realizes with growing horror. They're being forced to continue the route. The bus begins moving, rolling away from the overlook toward the most dangerous section of Mountain Road, the narrow passage where the original search teams believed an avalanche had claimed the vehicle. Elena runs beside the moving bus, making eye contact with as many passengers as possible. "Remember," she shouts, knowing they probably can't hear her. "Remember your lives, your families, your choices. You have the power to break free." But the bus continues its inexorable journey toward Devil's Canyon, where the road narrows to barely 1 lane and cliffs drop away into misty abysses on both sides. Elena realizes with sinking dread that in 43 minutes these 23 souls will reach the exact spot where they vanished, and this time, she might be powerless to prevent history from repeating itself. Elena's police cruiser races through the fog-shrouded mountain road, chasing the ghost bus as it approaches Devil's Canyon, the narrow defile where the original disappearance occurred. The GPS shows they're climbing toward 1,847 meters elevation, the exact altitude recorded in the final emergency transmission 22 years ago. 31 minutes, Margot announces, checking her watch with obsessive precision. We have 31 minutes before sunset. Through breaks in the fog, Elena catches glimpses of the canyon walls rising on either side like ancient guardians. The road here was carved directly into living rock, barely wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass. On the left, granite cliffs soar upward into mist. On the right, the mountain drops away into a chasm so deep that locals claim it has no bottom. "This is where the emergency beacon stopped transmitting," Stanescu says, consulting his weathered case files. The bus sent an automated distress signal at exactly 6:13 p.m., then nothing. Search teams found no trace of wreckage, no skid marks, nothing to suggest the vehicle ever existed. Elena's radio suddenly crackles to life with a voice from the past. "Mountain Rescue, this is Mountain Vista Bus 747. We have an emergency situation. Please respond. The transmission is clear despite the electronic interference, but Alina recognizes the voice from witness interviews, Mihai Antonescu, the driver, speaking words recorded 22 years ago. Somehow, the radio equipment is picking up the original distress call, playing it back in real time as they approach the same location. Repeat. Mountain Vista 747, requesting immediate assistance. We have passengers in distress and something is wrong with the road ahead. The road is. Static overwhelms the transmission, but Alina hears something else beneath the electronic noise voices, many voices speaking in languages she doesn't recognize. Not human languages, but something older, more fundamental, like the sound wind makes when it moves through deep caves. The bus ahead suddenly stops at the narrowest point of the canyon, where the road curves around a massive granite outcropping. Alina parks her vehicle 50 meters behind, noting that the fog here moves in patterns that defy physics, spiraling upward in perfect helixes, flowing against gravity, forming shapes that almost resemble symbols before dissolving back into formless gray. Look at the rock face, Margot whispers, pointing toward the canyon wall. Alina follows her gaze and sees something that makes her question her sanity. The granite surface shows carvings, not ancient petroglyphs, but fresh marks that appear to be forming as she watches. Symbols and patterns emerge from the stone, as if carved by invisible hands, creating a complex mandala of interconnected circles and geometric shapes. Those weren't there in the original investigation, Stanescu confirms, comparing the scene to old photographs. The rock face was completely smooth. Alina approaches the bus cautiously, noting that the carved symbols seem to pulse with faint light whenever she draws closer. The passengers inside sit motionless as before, but their eyes now track her movements with intense focus, as if they're trying to communicate something crucial. Klaus Weber's window is fogged with condensation, but someone has traced words in the moisture. The threshold opens at sunset. We are the key to what? Alina asks aloud, knowing she won't receive an answer, but needing to voice the question. Her phone buzzes with another mysterious text. They volunteered, but they didn't understand the price. 22 years of servitude for 22 minutes of passage. The debt comes due at sunset. Alina shows the message to her companions. Someone's been watching this situation for a long time. Someone who knows exactly what's happening here. Detective, Stanescu says urgently, look at the road ahead. Alina turns toward the curve where the canyon narrows further, and her breath catches in her throat. The asphalt surface is changing, becoming translucent like black ice. Through the transparent road, she can see into the chasm below, and there are lights down there, moving in organized patterns like a city of fireflies in the depths of the earth. My God, Margot breathes. What is that place? Before Alina can respond, the bus engine roars to life. Through the windshield, she sees Mihai Antonescu struggling against invisible forces, his hands fighting his own movements as they turn the steering wheel toward the transparent section of road. They're being forced to drive into whatever's down there, Alina realizes. The canyon isn't a dead end, it's a gateway. She runs toward the driver's side of the bus, pounding on the door. Mihai, fight it. You have the power to choose. The driver's eyes meet hers through the glass, and for a moment she sees the man he was, devoted father, careful professional, someone who would never endanger the lives entrusted to him. His mouth forms words. I can't. It's too strong. But then Klaus Weber stands up inside the bus, her movement breaking the unnatural stillness that has held her for 22 years. She places her hand on the driver's shoulder, and Alina sees her speaking urgently to him. She's fighting back, Margot cries, tears streaming down her face. My daughter is fighting back. One by one, other passengers begin to move. Hans Weber reaches for his wife's hand. The elderly Rossi couple embrace each other. James Crawford, the photographer, raises his camera as if documenting their final moments. Young Emma Weber presses both hands against the window, her eyes blazing with determination that transcends her 16 years. The carved symbols on the canyon wall pulse brighter, and the strange voices beneath the radio static grow louder, more urgent. Whatever force has imprisoned these souls for 2 decades is not pleased with their rebellion. Elena's watch shows 18 minutes until sunset. 18 minutes to break a supernatural contract that has bound 23 people. To serve as keys for something that should never be opened. How do we help them? Margot asks desperately. Elena stares at the transparent road, the pulsing symbols, the bus full of people who have been dead to the world for 22 years, but refuse to surrender their humanity. The answer comes to her with crystalline clarity, terrible in its simplicity. We join them, she says. Whatever debt they owe, whatever price must be paid, we share it. 3 more volunteers to tip the balance. Elena places her hand on the bus door handle, feeling it burn cold against her skin like touching winter metal with bare flesh. The moment her fingers make contact, visions flood her mind. 22 years of captivity condensed into seconds of overwhelming sensation. She sees the passengers trapped in a realm between worlds, aware of every passing moment, but powerless to act. She feels their desperate longing for home, their families, their interrupted lives. But beneath these human emotions lurks something vast and alien, a presence that regards their suffering with the detached interest of a collector studying specimens. Elena, no! Stanescu grabs her arm, pulling her back from the bus. You don't understand what you're offering to. Sacrifice. I understand exactly what I'm offering, Elena replies, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. These people have been paying a price they never agreed to. Someone needs to renegotiate the terms. Margot steps forward, her elderly hands trembling but resolute. If my daughter must remain trapped, then I choose to join her. A mother belongs with her child. Through the bus windows, Klaus Weber sees her mother approaching and begins pounding on the glass with both fists, her face contorted with anguish. The sound echoes strangely in the canyon, as if the rocks themselves are amplifying her desperate protests. She doesn't want you to sacrifice yourself, Elena observes. None of them do. That's not how we break this cycle. The carved symbols on the canyon wall pulse more rapidly now, and Elena realizes they're responding to the emotional intensity of the moment. Love, sacrifice, determination. These human qualities seem to agitate whatever force controls this place. Elena's phone buzzes with another message. The threshold was never meant for humans. They opened a door that should have remained sealed. Now something waits on the other side, and their suffering powers the lock that keeps it contained. A prison. Elena breathes, understanding flooding through her. The passengers aren't being punished, they're being used as guards. Their psychic energy, their life force, maintains a barrier between our world and something that wants to break through. Stanescu examines the symbols more closely, comparing them to sketches in his case files. These markings. I've seen similar patterns in Romanian folklore, binding symbols used to contain malevolent spirits. The bus engine revs again, but this time the passengers inside are working together to resist the compulsion. Mihai Antonescu has both feet pressed against the brake pedal while Klaus Weber helps him maintain control of the steering wheel. Other passengers brace themselves against seats and windows, their combined will fighting against the invisible force trying to drive them toward the transparent road. 15 minutes until sunset, Margot announces, her voice tight with anxiety. Elena studies the situation with a detective's analytical mind. 23 people trapped for 22 years, forced to serve as unwilling guardians of some cosmic prison. Their suffering powers the containment system, but their rebellion weakens it. If they break free completely, what happens to whatever they've been keeping locked away? Her radio crackles with a new voice, not from the past this time, but speaking. In real time, Detective Popescu. This is Dr. Adrian Varga from the Institute for Paranormal Research in Cluj. We've been monitoring unusual energy readings from your location. Dr. Varga, how did you know to contact me? We've been tracking this phenomenon for decades. The canyon serves as a dimensional weak point, and something has been trying to widen the breach for over a century. The bus passengers aren't prisoners there. Heroes, volunteers who agreed to serve as a living seal. Elena's mind reels. Volunteers? But they disappeared without warning, with no explanation to their families. Because the truth would have caused panic. They were approached individually, told about the threat, asked to make the ultimate sacrifice for humanity's protection. But the entity they're containing has grown stronger over the years, and their prison is failing. Through the bus windows, Elena sees the passengers listening to the radio transmission. Klaus Weber nods grimly, confirming Dr. Varga's explanation. She mouths words that Elena can clearly read. We chose this. But we're tired. Doctor, Elena says urgently, how do we resolve this without releasing whatever they're containing? There's only one way. The barrier requires willing guardians, but it doesn't require the same guardians forever. If new volunteers step forward to replace them, the original 23 can be released. Margot immediately moves toward they. Bus, I volunteer. Take me instead of my daughter. No. Klaus Weber's voice comes through the radio, somehow transmitted from inside the bus. Mama, I won't let you sacrifice your remaining years for my mistake. Elena realizes the cruel irony of the situation. The passengers can only be freed if others take their place, but their love for family and friends prevents them from accepting such substitutions. They're trapped not just by supernatural forces, but by their own compassion. What if we found a different solution? Elena asks. Dr. Varga, what exactly is being contained down there? Something that shouldn't exist in our reality. An entity that feeds on dimensional barriers, weakening the walls between worlds. If it escapes, it won't just threaten Earth, it will compromise the entire fabric of space-time. The transparent road ahead begins to glow more brightly, and the lights in the chasm below start moving more rapidly. Whatever waits down there can sense the approaching sunset, the moment when the barrier is weakest. 10 minutes, Stanescu announces grimly. Elena makes a decision that will haunt her regardless of the outcome. She approaches the bus and speaks directly to Klaus Weber through the glass. What if we don't replace you? What if we strengthen the barrier instead, giving you the power to maintain it without suffering? Klaus Weber's eyes widen with sudden hope, but then she shakes her head sadly. The entity feeds on pain, Detective. Joy and love actually weaken the containment. We learned that early whenever we tried to comfort each other, the prison walls thinned. Elena stares at the pulsing symbols, the terrified passengers, the approaching sunset that will either free 23 souls or doom the world. The answer comes to her in a flash of desperate inspiration. Then we give it what it really wants, she says. Not your suffering, but the chance to escape. We open the door just enough to let it think it's winning, then slam it shut with a stronger lock. Elena, Stanescu says quietly, that's the most dangerous gamble in human history. Yes, Elena agrees, checking her watch, and we have 8 minutes to make it work. Elena positions herself directly in front of the transparent road section, her feet planted on solid asphalt, just meters from where reality becomes negotiable. The carved symbols on the canyon walls now pulse with urgent light, responding to her proximity and the approaching sunset that will mark the 22nd anniversary of the original disappearance. Dr. Varga, she speaks into her radio, I need you to walk me through exactly how this containment system works. We have 7 minutes. The entity below exists partially in our dimension and partially in others. Dr. Varga's voice crackles through the interference. The passenger's life energy creates a barrier that prevents it from fully manifesting. But the barrier weakens every year on the anniversary, requiring renewal through their continued suffering. Elena studies the bus where the 23 passengers have formed a human chain, each person touching the next, their combined will fighting against the compulsion to drive forward into the abyss. Klaus Weber has taken position behind the driver, her hands helping Mihai Antonescu maintain control of the steering wheel. What happens if the barrier fails completely? Elena asks. Dimensional cascade failure. Reality breaks down starting from this point and spreading outward like cracks in glass. Every world, every universe connected to ours becomes vulnerable. Margot Weber approaches Elena, her face set with maternal determination. Detective, if you're planning what I think you're planning, you'll need someone to anchor you to this reality, someone with an unbreakable connection to the passengers. Elena nods, understanding immediately. A mother's love for her daughter, that bond transcends dimensional barriers and supernatural forces. Mrs. Weber, what I'm about to attempt could kill us all. My Klaus has been dead to me for 22 years, Margot replies firmly. Whatever happens, we face it together. Elena approaches the edge of the transparent road, feeling the temperature drop with each step. The air itself seems thinner here, as if she's climbing to impossible altitudes. Through the translucent surface, the lights below pulse more rapidly, and she can sense vast intelligence focused on her presence. 5 minutes until sunset, Stanescu calls out, his voice tight with anxiety. Elena kneels at the boundary between solid asphalt and the supernatural threshold, placing her hands flat against the transparent surface. The contact sends shock waves through her nervous system, visions of cosmic emptiness, of realities where physics follows different rules, of hungry intelligence that regards human consciousness as a fascinating delicacy you would bargain with. Forces beyond your comprehension, a voice speaks directly into her mind, bypassing her ears entirely. These 23 souls have served their purpose well. Their anguish sustains the prison that contains me, but their will grows weak. Soon, I will be free to explore your delicious reality. I offer you a trade, Elena responds mentally, fighting to maintain her sanity against the alien presence pressing into her thoughts. One soul freely given in exchange for 23 held against their will. Intriguing. But why would I accept one when I already possess 23? And soon, when the barrier fails, I will have access to billions. Elena forces herself to smile, despite the terror coursing through her veins. Because the one soul I'm offering is a police detective who has spent her career solving impossible cases. Someone who understands how to find weaknesses in any system, including supernatural prisons. The entity's attention focuses on her with uncomfortable intensity, probing her memories and motivations. She feels it examining her successes, her methods, her ability to see patterns others miss. Clever, you offer yourself not as a mere battery to power the containment, but as a potential ally in my escape. But what assurance do I have of your cooperation? None whatsoever, Elena admits. But consider this, a willing collaborator is infinitely more valuable than 23 unwilling prisoners. I could study your prison from the inside, find genuine weaknesses rather than forcing you to wait for the barriers to decay naturally. Through her connection to the entity, Elena senses its growing interest. It has been patient for decades, feeding on the passenger's suffering while slowly eroding the dimensional barriers. But the promise of active assistance, of someone working toward its freedom rather than against it, appeals to its predatory intelligence. 3 minutes, Stanescu announces, his voice barely audible over the building's supernatural pressure. The entity's response comes with crushing force. Very well. I accept your terms. Enter willingly, and I will release the others. But understand, once you cross the threshold, you become mine completely. Your consciousness, your memories, your very soul will serve my purposes. Elena looks back at the bus, where Klaus Weber watches her through the window with obvious horror. The young woman shakes her head frantically, understanding what Elena intends to sacrifice. Mrs. Weber, Elena calls to Margot, when I cross over, maintain physical contact with the bus. Your connection to Klaus should anchor all of them to this reality long enough for them to escape. Elena, wait. Stanescu approaches with his case. Files clutched against his chest. What if this doesn't work? What if the entity simply takes you and keeps the others? Elena meets his eyes with calm certainty. Then you run. Get as far from this canyon as possible and pray that someone else can find a way to stop what I've unleashed. She stands and walks toward the transparent road, each step feeling like moving through increasingly thick water. Behind her, she hears Margot positioning herself against the bus, speaking urgently to her daughter through the glass. 2 minutes until sunset. Elena reaches the exact center of the transparent section, where the boundary between dimensions is thinnest. The lights below surge upward, reaching for her with tendrils of energy that feel like ice and electricity combined. Come, the entity whispers seductively. Join me willingly, and together we will explore realities beyond imagination. Elena takes a deep breath, closes her eyes, and steps forward into the abyss, but not to join the entity. Instead, she reaches into her jacket and pulls out a device. Dr. Varga transmitted instructions for during their radio conversation, a modified electromagnetic pulse generator designed to disrupt dimensional barriers. As she falls through the transparent road toward the lights below, Elena activates the device with her last conscious thought, not to free the entity, but to collapse the entire dimensional weak point, sealing it permanently with herself as the final lock. The canyon erupts in blinding light as reality reshapes itself around her sacrifice. The electromagnetic pulse tears through the dimensional fabric like lightning through silk, and Elena feels herself scattered across multiple realities simultaneously. She exists in the canyon falling toward alien lights in her childhood bedroom, afraid of storms, in her mother's hospital room holding a dying hand, and in 1,000 other moments that define her humanity. The entity's shriek of rage reverberates through dimensions as it realizes Elena's deception. You have doomed yourself for nothing. The barrier cannot be sealed permanently, only transferred. But Elena, even as her consciousness fragments across space-time, maintains focus on the one thing that matters, the bus full of innocent people who deserve to go home. Through her dispersing awareness, she sees the transparent road solidifying back into normal asphalt, the carved symbols on the canyon walls flaring once before going dark, and the supernatural fog beginning to dissipate. Elena! Stanescu's voice echoes strangely, as if reaching her from across vast distances. The bus engine sputters and dies. Through windows that are suddenly, blessedly, completely normal glass, Elena sees the passengers blinking in confusion like people waking from shared nightmares. Klaus Weber looks around the bus interior with growing recognition, her eyes widening as she realizes where she is and how much time has passed. Margot Weber pounds on the bus door, and this time it opens with an ordinary mechanical click. Klaus stumbles down the steps and into her mother's arms, both women crying as they embrace for the first time in 22 years. Mama? Klaus's voice is exactly as it was in 2002, carrying the same cadence and warmth. What happened to us? Where have we been? Other passengers emerge from the bus in various states of confusion and relief. Hans Weber helps his daughter, Emma, down the steps, while the elderly Rossi couple supports each other with the practiced ease of long marriage. James Crawford immediately begins photographing everything, his professional instincts intact despite the temporal displacement. You were taken, Margot explains through her tears, stroking her daughter's hair that shows no sign of the decades that have passed. But you're home now, you're finally home. Elena watches this reunion from her fractured state of existence, feeling satisfaction despite her dissolution. The passengers are free, the entity is contained, and the dimensional weak point has been sealed. But as her consciousness continues to scatter, she realizes the entity spoke truth. The barrier hasn't been destroyed, only restructured. She has become the new lock, her life force now powering the containment system that keeps the hungry intelligence trapped between worlds. Unlike the bus passengers who suffered in ignorance, Elena enters her prison with full knowledge of what she's preserving and why her sacrifice matters. You understand now, the entity whispers through their shared dimensional space. You will spend eternity as my jailer, watching over me in solitude, your sanity slowly eroding as the years pass. Was their freedom worth your eternal damnation? Elena's scattered consciousness gathers itself enough to respond with crystalline clarity, yes. But even as she accepts her fate, Elena becomes aware of something the entity has overlooked in its rage. The electromagnetic pulse didn't just seal the dimensional barrier. It sent a signal across multiple realities, a distress call that has been received by others who monitor such cosmic threats. Dr. Varga's voice reaches her through quantum entanglement. Elena, can you hear me? The pulse worked, but we're detecting massive instability in your dimensional position. Hold on, help is coming. Through fractal perception spanning infinite realities, Elena sees them. Other guardians, other heroes who have made similar sacrifices. Across the multiverse, they exist in their own dimensional prisons, maintaining barriers against threats to cosmic stability. But they are not alone, and neither will she be. A presence approaches through the spaces between worlds, not the hungry entity she's containing, but something vast and benevolent, ancient beyond measure. It speaks not in words, but in concepts that bypass language entirely. You have chosen well, Guardian. Your sacrifice preserves countless worlds, but sacrifice need not mean solitude. Accept our fellowship, and your burden becomes shared. Elena feels connection forming links to other souls who have made impossible choices to protect realities they will never see again. Through these connections, her fragmenting consciousness stabilizes, finding anchor points in shared purpose and mutual understanding. The entity below grows quiet, perhaps realizing that its new jailer is not the isolated, vulnerable mind it expected to slowly corrupt. Elena exists now as part of a network of guardians, her individual will reinforced by collective determination. That spans dimensions. In the canyon, Stanescu coordinates with Dr. Varga's research team as they arrive by helicopter. The passengers undergo medical evaluations that reveal the impossible. Despite 22 years of absence, they show no signs of aging, malnutrition, or psychological trauma beyond initial confusion. It's as if they were placed in temporal suspension, Dr. Varga explains to Stanescu as they watch families reunite. Their bodies and minds preserved at the exact moment of disappearance. Klaus Weber approaches Stanescu with questions that have no easy answers. Inspector, what happened to our families, our jobs, the lives we left behind? Stanescu chooses his words carefully, mindful of the delicate psychological state of people displaced in time. The world moved on, but love remained constant. Your families never stopped hoping, never stopped believing you would return. Through her dimensional awareness, Elena watches these conversations with bittersweet satisfaction. The passengers will face challenges reintegrating into a world that has changed around them, but they have the chance to rebuild, to love, to live the lives that were stolen from them. As night falls over the Carpathian Mountains, the last of the supernatural phenomena fade, the canyon returns to being merely a scenic overlook, its dark history known only to a few. The bus will be studied, the passengers debriefed, and eventually, some version of normalcy will return. But Elena remains, standing guard in the spaces between worlds, ensuring that the hungry darkness stays contained. She is no longer fully human, but she has not lost her humanity. In saving 23 souls, she has discovered that heroism sometimes requires becoming something more than mortal. The watch begins, she thinks to herself, settling into her eternal vigil with peace rather than despair. 6 months after the Brasov Mountain Pass incident, Detective Elena Popescu officially remains listed as missing in action. Her disappearance classified as a line-of-duty casualty with circumstances deemed too sensitive for public disclosure. But for those who know the truth, she has never been more present. Sarah Chun, still working the overnight shift at the toll station, often pauses during quiet moments to study the security monitors. Sometimes in the corner of her vision, she catches glimpses of movement that shouldn't exist, a figure in a police uniform checking on passing vehicles, ensuring safe passage through the mountain roads. When she turns for a direct look, nothing is there. But somehow she knows Elena continues her duty in ways that transcend ordinary understanding. Klaus Weber sits in her mother's kitchen in Munich, drinking coffee that tastes exactly as she remembers from 2002. The world has changed around her in ways both jarring and wonderful: smartphones, social media, a dozen small technological advances that mark the passage of time she didn't experience. But Margot's love remains constant, an anchor point in the temporal displacement. I dream about her sometimes, Klaus confides to her mother, referring to Elena, the detective who saved us. She's not suffering. Mama, she's luminous, like she found something in that other place that made her more than she was before. The other passengers have adapted to their return with varying degrees of success. James Crawford's photographs from inside the bus during their captivity revealed impossible images, geometries that shouldn't exist, glimpses of other realities, faces of beings that exist between dimensions. The scientific community studies these images with fascination and growing alarm, recognizing evidence of cosmic forces beyond human comprehension. Dr. Adrian Varga has established a discrete monitoring station in the Carpathian Mountains, staffed by volunteers who understand the significance of Elena's sacrifice. They track dimensional stability across the region, watching for signs that the containment might weaken or that other weak points might emerge. The readings are remarkable, Dr. Varga explains to Inspector Stanescu during one of their regular briefings. Whatever Elena did, it didn't just seal the breach, it strengthened the fundamental barriers between realities. We're detecting similar stabilization at other dimensional weak points worldwide. Stanescu, now officially retired, but unofficially serving as a liaison between the Supernatural Investigation Unit and conventional law enforcement, maintains Elena's desk at the Brasov police station exactly as she left it. Her colleagues believe she died heroically in the line of duty, and in a sense, they're correct. But death, he has learned, is not always the end of service. Late one evening, as Stanescu reviews cold case files in the empty station, he feels a familiar presence. Elena's voice reaches him not through sound but through certainty. That bypasses his ears entirely. The Weber family is safe. The containment holds. But other cases need attention, Inspector. Other mysteries that only you can solve. He looks up from his paperwork to find a manila folder on Elena's desk that wasn't there moments before. Inside, he discovers evidence related to a 15-year-old missing persons case: photographs, witness statements, and connections that previous investigators missed. At the bottom of the file, written in Elena's unmistakable handwriting, are the words, "Check the abandoned monastery in Sinai. She's been waiting to come home." Over the following months, Stanescu solves 3 cold cases using similar guidance. Each time, evidence appears mysteriously on Elena's desk, always providing the crucial insight needed to bring closure to families who had given up hope. Word spreads quietly through the law enforcement community about the phantom detective, who continues solving cases from beyond conventional reality. Meanwhile, in the spaces between worlds, Elena's consciousness has evolved into something magnificent and strange. She exists simultaneously as guardian, investigator, and bridge between realities. The network of interdimensional protectors has welcomed her not just as a new member, but as a coordinator, someone whose detective skills help identify and address threats across multiple universes. The entity she contains remains imprisoned, but Elena has learned to use their connection constructively. Its vast knowledge of dimensional mechanics, filtered through her human morality and purpose, allows her to prevent cosmic catastrophes before they fully manifest. She has become not just a jailer, but a cosmic detective solving crimes against reality itself. "You have surprised me," the entity admits during one of their mental exchanges. "I expected your human mind to break under the weight of infinite responsibility. Instead, you have grown stronger." "Purpose is its own strength," Elena responds. "I protect what I love, and love expands to encompass whatever needs protection." On the first anniversary of the Brasov incident, all 23 rescued passengers gather at the mountain overlook for a memorial service. They place flowers at a modest plaque that reads, "Detective Elena Popescu. She chose to serve." But as they stand in silent gratitude, each person present feels her presence, not as a ghost haunting the location of her sacrifice, but as a living force ensuring their continued safety. Klaus Weber speaks for all of them. "We were given a second chance at life because someone chose to give up her own. The least we can do is live it well." As the sun sets behind the Carpathian peaks, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, a gentle wind moves through the canyon carrying the scent of mountain flowers and the sound of distant laughter. For just a moment, Elena becomes visible. To those who knew her, not as the terrified woman who fell into the abyss, but as something radiant and eternal, a guardian angel with a detective's badge and infinite compassion. She raises her hand in a farewell salute, then fades back into the light between worlds, continuing her watch over realities seen and unseen. The passengers return to their rebuilt lives, the investigators return to their cases, and the mountain returns to its ancient silence. But in the quantum foam that underlies all existence, Elena Popescu remains on duty solving mysteries that span universes, protecting the innocent across infinite realities, and proving that love truly is the strongest force in any dimension. Her mother's hospital room in Bucharest stays empty now, the machines finally silent. But sometimes, late at night, the nurses report seeing a figure in a police uniform sitting beside the bed, holding the hand of a woman who passed peacefully in her sleep, knowing her daughter had found a purpose worthy of any sacrifice. The watch continues, the guardian endures. And somewhere in the light between worlds, Detective Elena Popescu smiles as she opens her next case file, a mystery that spans 3 dimensions and threatens the stability of 7 different realities. It's going to be interesting.